On this week's Touch Basin's Hole, we're joined by Stephanie Jae Park, a Korean-American actor and singer based in New York, as well as releasing an album called Fire to My Air as part of the music group Saffron Lips earlier this year. She's also starring on Broadway currently. She is playing Eliza Hamilton in the smash hit musical sensation Hamilton. And to tell us about her story, Stephanie Jae Park herself joins us via video now from her dressing room. Ms. Park, hello. Thank you for coming on the show today.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yes, it's a pleasure to have you with us. I gave a brief introduction, but can you tell us a little bit about yourself for our listeners?
Sure. My name is Stephanie J. Park. My Korean name is Park Joo-hee. I live in New York City. I was born and raised on Guam. And I'm coming at you from the middle of Times Square, basically. So I hope there's no extra noises, but I'm coming at you about 45 minutes after my show in my dressing room, and I'm excited to just kind of dive in with you.
Sure. For our YouTube viewers who'll be seeing this interview, they'll get to see what your dressing room looks like, what the
Yeah.
backstage of Broadway looks like. So let's talk a little bit about your story as well. I understand that you had a love of music from a very young age, and that you in fact come from a musical family.
Yes, yeah. So I am the youngest of three daughters. I have two older sisters, and my mom and dad were very musical. In the very first opera on Guam, my mom played Mimi in La Boheme, and she was like a huge star for us growing up. They were very involved in the symphony chorales and always the church choir conductors. And so music is kind of my third language, I would say. It's just kind of in my being. I learned how to read music when I was learning how to read English and Korean. So I feel very grateful to have this background.
Sure, and perhaps due to your mother's influence, I believe you originally studied opera, but then you switched to musical theatre, right?
That's correct.
So what made you choose musical theatre?
Well, a couple things. Opera will always be my first love. I love opera. I love to go watch opera. I just could not choose which genre of music I wanted to do, honestly. And musical theater is quite all-encompassing. There's classical musical theater, and then there's pop, and there's this was just hip hop. There's rock. And from a young age, I wanted to be as free and unlimited in my choices as a singer. Yeah. And I also wanted to act and I wanted to dance. Those were things I think classical singers also act, of course, but I wanted it to be equal. And I used to dance a lot as well, so I didn't want to give up that part of me as well. So that's why I chose musical theater.
Sure, and then you forged a career in musical theatre, and you've now ended up playing Eliza Hamilton in Hamilton, which is probably the most exciting and the most successful musical in the last 10 years or so. Can you tell us about how you landed the role and what it felt like to take on this role?
Sure. So back when Hamilton came out, maybe in 2015 or so, a lot of my friends were telling me, you have to be in this show. You have to play Eliza specifically. And it's funny, I was a little bit resistant to it only because it was so popular. And I was like, I was kind of resisting the popular trend. But then I watched it and I listened to it and I was like, oh, this is very, very good. And it's very successful for a reason. I think it's historical when it comes to musical theater. And so when I changed from an agency to a manager, I told them that everyone tells me I should be in Hamilton, but I've never auditioned for them. Maybe I should. So that was my very first audition with this new manager, and I got it. I got a standby track, which is to understudy the three main female characters in the show. And then just kind of worked my way up through the different companies and to now playing Eliza on Broadway.
Sure, I'm sure a lot of our listeners will be familiar with the musical, but can you tell us a little bit about it? You said it's a hip-hop musical, right? And can you also tell us a little
Yes.
bit about your role, Eliza Hamilton?
Sure, yeah. Hamilton is this very singular, um, very cool, if I may say so myself. It's a hip hop musical. Basically, it takes a lot of familiar hip hop references, and it's a story about Alexander Hamilton, who was one of the founding fathers of America. So a lot of the characters are like George Washington, who's our first president, Thomas Jefferson. Well, I guess we don't have a John Adams, but it's a story about the history of America,
Hmm.
which is so nerdy, but then told through hip hop and in both dance and music. And so the dancing is very contemporary. The characters are played by a very diverse cast. It's mostly non-white, especially when it comes to the characters. And my role, I play Alexander Hamilton's wife. So I play kind of in my head, she's the emotional equivalent. She's like the emotional part of the show, I think.
Hmm.
She's the heart of the show. And Alexander Hamilton and a lot of the male characters are like the uh, extra wordy, telling the story part of the show. So, yeah.
And what's it like to play the role, especially as I'm sure performing in Broadway as one of the lead characters would have been something you've always dreamed about?
I mean, I this is my third week playing Eliza, so I'm just riding on a high. I'm so happy to be here. I've worked really hard for the last decade or so. This is my third Broadway show, but it's my first playing a principal. Um, and she just fits, the character just kind of fits me just right, vocally, emotionally. It's really, really challenging. I don't want to spoil things for you, but Eliza has a very intense emotional journey, especially in Act Two. And so it's been an honor to tell her story of a woman who is so emotionally intelligent and strong. And there would be no Hamilton today without Eliza Hamilton because she was the one who carried on his legacy and made sure that we all know who he is today.
We saw on your social media that you commented that you're able to inspire little Korean or Asian girls who never saw themselves on stage through the
Mhm.
character Eliza. Is that issue of representation something that you've always been aware of and important to you?
Absolutely. I mean, Hamilton was the first show on Broadway that cast mostly non-white actors as the roles, and specifically for the characters that are actually historically white, right? And so growing up and even like majoring in musical theater, I came to the industry already limiting myself because I'd never seen anyone like me playing a role that wasn't just written for an Asian woman. So I thought I could only play roles in King and I or Miss Saigon or Flower Drum Song, and I didn't even think that it was possible for me to play anything else in the whole vast um, array of musicals. And so Hamilton was the first time I thought, oh, I could actually play any of those roles. And it really opened up my eyes. And I am so excited that it has, it's still an issue. I still think there needs to be a lot more diversity, both on stage, behind the camera, in the writing room, in the producing room. There just needs to be more people to um, represent art. Like art is a representation of our world, and
Sure.
we need more, different kinds of people representing us. And uh, I'm just so. If I got to see myself at a young age on Broadway, I would have thought very differently about my career as a young girl.
Right, so it must be exciting to be performing in front of full crowds again as well, especially after everything that we went through over the last 3 years with COVID-19 and theatres especially
Mhm.
being hit hard. But I understand that this was during this period. It was during this period that you formed the group Saffron Lips with your partner Voltaire Wade-Greene. Can you tell us a bit more about that as well?
Sure, yeah. So the pandemic was a strange blessing in disguise because uh, Voltaire Wade-Green, my partner, he is also a Broadway actor. He was actually in the original cast of Hamilton. But both of us, we are so lucky to say, have kind of non-stopped working, which is nice. It's a luxury, but because of that, we never got to dive into this other interest that we've always had in our lives. I've always wanted to be a recording artist. I've always wanted to write my own music, but it takes a lot of time to be a beginner and to start and to, take all the classes. And so the pandemic gave us this time to pursue what we thought was just a hobby at first, just making music together. And the more we did it, the more time we spent on it. We took a bunch of classes, and it ended up being our main focus throughout the pandemic. And the more we did it, the more we're like, oh, this is good. This is really good music. This is actually, this is, if I may say so myself, this is quite individual, and I haven't heard anything like it. And so we finally just pursued this separate dream that we've always kind of had in our lives and finally had the time to do.
Sure. Is that something you think you're going to continue to explore alongside your musical theatre career?
Yes, definitely, definitely. It's taken a bit of a pause just because there's been so much happening in both of our theater careers, actually. But we're so eager to get back in it. We're so excited to get back in the room and behind the mic and behind the DAW, the Logic Pro. We're eager. We're very eager.
Fantastic. So there's more we can look forward to then. Okay, and finally,
Absolutely.
I know you've just taken on the role of Eliza, and I'm sure you're just enjoying your time in Broadway at the moment, but I understand that there could be an Asia tour of Hamilton, and that it could be coming to South Korea as well. Would you possibly be coming to South Korea as well then?
Look, if it's not in my hands, and this Asia tour right now, I don't even know if it's been announced. So you guys are getting some secret intel. But
Okay.
all I know is that if I am allowed to, then I would definitely love to come and play Eliza in Korea. It would be such a dream come true, if the cards work out.
Sure, and it'd be a treat for Korean musical fans as well to see you perform in Korea, I think. And if you do, we'd love to invite you back on this show and to speak about your time here.
Absolutely.
Well, we're going to have to leave it there. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk with you today. We've been talking to Stephanie Jae Park, playing Eliza in Hamilton on Broadway. Thank you once again for your time today.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.